Crash Twinsanity is a total shit show, and I mean that in the best way possible. After the last 2 videos I've made, I thought it'd be nice to take a step back from all the serious stuff and replay the stupidest fucking game I know. This ain't your standard Crash Bandicoot game, because long gone are the days of warp rooms containing hallway-based levels with crystals to collect and boxes to bonk for gems. We've gone with a more sandbox structure of large open areas, though still relatively linear, but now with a grander overarching plot, gems to be collected through platforming puzzles rather than through box count, and overall just one long collective adventure rather than picking and choosing where you want to go. And most notably, Crash Twinsanity just has a completely different vibe around it. Sure, Crash himself was always a goofball, but everybody in the world around him was always for the most part played pretty straight. I said for the most part. But Twinsanity takes everyone and everything and cranks them up to 1000 with easily the wackiest scenes and gameplay the franchise has ever seen. The game goes absolutely a million miles per hour, throwing everything it can at the wall and seeing what shit sticks. You've got classic Crash platforming, platforming with Cortex, escorting Cortex, snowboarding on Cortex, playing as Cortex, murdering Cortex.
Yeah, as I said, there's a lot of shit going on, and before I get into the ludicrous story, let me just lump some of my general thoughts, mostly complaints of the game here first.
But before I get into them, I must quickly thank the commenters from my Far Cry 3 review. If you'd like to be featured in my next video, then leave your comments here, and last but not least, thank you to my magnificent patrons Stan, Dotman, Jesse, Brian, Angel, and the Foe 3. As I said earlier, gems are to be collected primarily by completing platforming puzzles. A big problem though is Crash sometimes just doesn't have a shadow, so it makes predicting the trajectory of your jumps much harder. It was so bad that I found myself having to tilt the camera straight down just so I could get a clear overhead view to see if I'd stick the landing. Speaking of the platforming puzzles, a lot of them are smothered in explosives, and you might think, well then just sacrifice an Aku Aku so you can bust right through and grab the gem. But in this game you can't do that because Aku Aku no longer protects you from explosions. To be fair, it's a good thing they didn't oversee this being an issue, because if Aku Aku functioned the same way he did in previous games, you could cheat a lot of these puzzles. But the downside is that Aku Aku becomes quite useless in the main game as a result of this. And if that wasn't bad enough, invincible Aku Aku is nerfed as well. Before you could run right through explosives and enemies like a freight train, but nope, not even that works anymore. You're still exempt from taking damage from direct attacks, but that's it. I know people were pissed at Wrath of Cortex for changing the invincible Aku Aku theme, but at least he still had a theme, because here he doesn't get shit. And the power-up lasts for an even lesser duration than it did in Wrath of Cortex, which already was only half as long as it lasted in the original trilogy. My final criticism, and notably the most notorious thing about this game, is that it is an absolute unpolished, plot hole-ridden, glitchy clusterfuck. To be fair, I did emulate this game, but trust me, it is well documented just how rushed and therefore inevitably glitchy this game is no matter what you play it on. Cortex was talking to me here, but also wasn't here. There's inadequate sound design, whether it's crates not making a breaking sound. These robots make a poof when hit rather than a nice crunch. Cutscenes like this one with Embryo are completely devoid of sound where there obviously should be sound. There's also no sound in this cutscene at all. Crash quite often transcends the known physics of our universe. And I know this is Twinsanity. The gimmick is the game is supposed to be wacky and wild, but the plot makes zero sense sometimes, but I'll save that for when I specifically get into the story. There's plenty more I'm sure I forgot or just missed, but trust me, this game's a fucking rushed mess and the developers know it.
Come now as we explore a new dimension! It should have been 2 new dimensions, but we ran out of time.
I mean, there's so much cut content to digest that examining all of it would make this video twice as long, so I'll just give a brief overview. There's an extras gallery featured in the game where you can view some of the cut content the more you collect gems. There's dozens of audio clips online from removed cutscenes you can check out, and I would definitely look into them if you're not already familiar with them. There's plenty of footage you can find of cut gameplay elements, altered levels, and even levels that had to be removed entirely due to time restraints. It's such a shame because I truly think Twinsanity had the potential to be the best Crash game of all time if it got the time it needed. While it's unknown where Twinsanity would have stood overall in the Crash Bandicoot hierarchy had it received the proper development time, to me there is no doubt in my mind that the soundtrack the game brings to the table is the best Crash Bandicoot has to offer. The music was composed by the a cappella group Spiral Mouth, a cappella meaning that everything you hear was created not with actual instruments but only the group's mouths. And the result is my favorite soundtrack from a game ever. You have to give this a listen.
Okay, that's enough of that for now. Let's get on to the story. There is so goddamn much going on here, and I'll do my best to keep things coherent, but this game is all over the fucking place, so if it's a lot to follow, I'm sorry, but it's not my fault.
We kick things off with Coco frolicking through the fields. Oh god, Cortex, what the hell are you planning? Ah! Crash has a shoe in his mouth, how unsanitary. But seriously, what the hell is this?
There's something weird going on in the bay! Come see!
Oh, alright, fine, I'll play along, but only for the simple joy that we get to explore Crash's home and Sanity Island in all its glory. After playing Jak and Daxter for the first time last 2 years ago, holy shit, I thought that was last year. I can't help but think about it after realizing just how similar the structure of it and Twinsanity are. I just know Misty Island's out there somewhere. The more open approach for Crash is very welcome after 4 main games of the same thing. Although I'll gladly accept getting Crash games like that till the end days of humanity, it's nice to see the marsupial move out of his comfort zone into something more modern, and the series feels right at home going for this style. It's not drastically different, but it's still different enough to feel fresh. Being able to explore Crash's homeland is a treat. There's a variety of different gem puzzles, like sledding your way over to this small island, shooting cannonballs into tiki mouths and scaling across them, leading innocent chickens to their demise. But the best part of the game here early on, never thought I would say this about any game, is the tutorial.
It's true. Blondes do have more fun.
It's easily the most entertaining tutorial you will ever play. Not that that's a high ceiling or anything, but Twinsanity crashes through that ceiling.
I'm okay!
The best part of the tutorial, though, is this skunk who decides he won't be your enemy any longer, so you spin him into nitro.
Where's the kaboom?
Once you're wrapped up with that hogwash, Cortex confronts you, revealing that he was indeed not Coco the whole time.
And so I've organized a little gathering, like a birthday party, except the exact opposite.
So, a death day party. I love that. You may have noticed Cortex sounds a bit different, and that's because this is also the first game where Cortex isn't reprised by Clancy Brown, as he's now voiced by the wonderful Lex Lang and has been the voice ever since. His performance completely steals the show throughout the whole game. He's awesome.
I've ruined the lives of so many. I can't be expected to remember them all.
Hell, even Cortex's boss fight to start the game here ain't half bad either. It's definitely one of the better Crash boss fight openers for sure, as he throws Death Day presents at you.
This is from Tiny. This is from Dingo Dial. Ripperoo, you shouldn't have.
Afterwards, he'll shoot his ray gun at you before you can deflect a blast, and this repeats until suddenly Mecha Bandicoot appears equipped with missiles and saws, and to beat him, you have to again deflect incoming blasts. Once that's taken care of, Cortex gets hit, loses control, and Crash and him tumble their way through the pit below the arena, and proceed to fight and roll their way all throughout caves tunneling underneath Sanity Island. This gameplay style functions the same as the Atmosphere from Wrath of Cortex, and I love that shit, so no complaints here. On second thought, what the fuck? For real, this section's great, as you whiz your way through the mine glowing with pots of acid and crystals sprawled across the cave walls. There's some really inventive platforming puzzles for gems, of course, like bouncing across pits while you're still fighting, maneuvering your way through various Wait!
Fuck you! Fuck you! Fuck you!
Luckily, my sorrows were immediately wiped away as we find our first power crystal. Well, really, Cortex grabs it and refuses to give it to us, so we just grab him instead. Once he's in your clutches, you have to throw him from platform to platform, chuck him into crystals which create bridges for you, and even crank gears with him to operate machinery. And then this giant drill pursues you at the end, which is always pretty intense, honestly. After the two escape the cave, they just stand there staring at their hands for some reason before a zipper with 2 birds appears out of nowhere, and they introduce themselves as the Evil Twins, which I'm sure is supposed to be a terrible name. The twins then extract Cortex's brain and throw it at him. Seriously, like, I've played this game 100 times, but writing this all down makes me realize just how fucking weird it actually is. Need I remind you that all of this has happened within the first half hour of the game? Yeah, Twinsanity's fucking crazy, and it doesn't slow down at all, because right after this, Cortex gets swarmed by bees, and you have to guide him through all these obstacles. And things get even worse when a bear gets on his ass. Then Papu Papu shows up and orders Cortex to be taken away, so we must rescue him by doing our best Sly Cooper impression, sneaking our way upstream before arriving at Papu Papu's village. Here we have to body slam a worm and chase it around until it leads us up to where Cortex is being held, smack him down, and snag another crystal. Oh shit. Oh no. Well, see ya. Classic Crash chase scene. Let's go! Well, that was fun. Time to womp some worms for this farmer in exchange for his power crystal.
I'm an evil scientist. What do you expect? This isn't a game. This isn't a game!
Once again, we're confronted by the evil twins before this totem god attacks us, meaning it's time for another boss fight. And considering this thing is supposed to be a god, when it turns out to be a shit fight, it's incredibly disappointing. You basically run in circles, launch Cortex down this thing's gullet, and you win. With that obstacle out of the way, we're on to our next stop. Iceberg Lab.png. The Iceberg Lab is host to Cortex's secret base.
Scary, but in the wrong hands, this iceberg lair could do much goodness in the world.
Seriously, every line of his is incredible in this game. I can't believe it. Since Cortex wasn't able to access his lab from the main entrance due to his busted key, we have to take the other way. And the other way is by venturing all the way up, through, and around the icy mountain. And it's magnificent. Starting from the bottom, jumping from platform to platform, hopping onto machinery, carrying you upwards and scaling across scaffolding, and even avoiding turbocharged penguins.
Watch out, watch out, watch out!
But that's not the end of the trek just yet, as you meet up with Cortex having a dispute with the locals.
The check bounced. Are you sure? Well, the past few years have kind of been slow. Wrath of Cortex didn't do as well as we'd hoped, and... Fish?
From here we get more Crash and Cortex platforming, and it's really good. Of course, you've got to throw them across gaps, throw them to activate switches, throw them to grab oh shit. Oh, hey, there he is! I mean, there's not too much to say. It's exactly what you see, but it's all good fun and a nice step up in skill and quality from what we were doing before. Best part of the whole thing, though? Stone Cold Steve Cortex. And that's right, that was Uka Uka you just saw. Don't know how he ended all the way up here when at the beginning of the game he was... Regardless, he's here to fight, and... I remember this being way harder. Basically, you have to act fast and get Cortex to each of the levers surrounding the arena, and every time he activates one, you jump on a button in the center of the arena, which will set Uka Uka on fire. It really wasn't hard considering all Uka Uka did was throw snowballs at me, so yeah. After the fight, Aku Aku convinces him to join forces with the rest of us to take down the evil twins.
A few moments later.
Trick or treat, trick or treat.
Fuck. Well, at least we've made it inside the lab to the Psychotron, which is the key to getting us to the evil twins' homeworld, the 10th dimension.
We require 6 power crystals in order to make the leap, and we have 4. Let's see. That isn't enough!
Well, it's time to go find more crystals, and the venture for the jewels kicks off with the level I'm probably the most nostalgic for from any game I've played. I was 5 years old when Twinsanity came out, and I remember me and my dad used to play it together. One night after I was put to bed, he kept playing, and he stopped right at this level for me to continue on the next morning because he just knew I would love it. And for you familiar viewers of mine, you would know...
He was right.
Yes, let's go! I don't know what it is. Something in my 8 brain goes bananas when I play this shit. It always has. After all this time and all the games I've played, this is still one of my favorite levels I've ever played in a video game. The gameplay is stupid fun, the music is the fucking best, and it's Twinsanity, so of course there's even some great comedy thrown in there as well.
Ladies? Excuse me, madam. Are those real? Mother?
As you sled further down, the two of you start to snowball, and it gets bigger and bigger before getting launched through the side of the mountain and crushing Dingo Dial's house. And he doesn't even care! He just heard Cortex mention the treasure the evil twins were blabbering about and took off, I guess. From here, we board Engine's battleship, where you have to maneuver across various machinery, avoid barrels, bounce across rockets over a pit of more rockets. It's a really cool level. Once you make it to the top of the ship, you meet Engine out at his crow's nest for easily his worst fight in the franchise and the worst boss fight of this entire game. You literally just run in circles for like 15 seconds, lure him into throwing TNT at his support beams, and after the fact he just wonders how he's fallen so far from grace. It's fucking terrible, and I guess they took all the challenge that was supposed to be put into the fight and instead channeled it into the ensuing chase sequence.
Ah, yummy fresh meat for my pot.
Yo, that boy's got real! Seriously, even when I spun the door shut behind me to slow the fat bastard down, he somehow always managed to catch up. Nonetheless, this is another part of the game I absolutely love, and the music here sounds like some shit Gail Bedecker would love. After this, we get thrown into a completely random boss fight with Entropy and Embryo.
Embryo, get changed.
The fact that the two team up to fight you is pretty cool, but the execution of the battle falls completely flat. It's just walking around, jumping around, rinse and repeat. I mean, I know Crash bosses haven't ever been the greatest, but man, they fucking suck so far here. It's really sad. It's a shame the Iceberg Lab area ends on such a sour note, but nonetheless, we're off next to the Academy of Evil because Coco suddenly showed back up, whacked Cortex in his crystals, and into the Psychotron Control Center. So now the thing's broken, and we'll need Cortex's niece Nina's help to repair it. We take Cortex's blimp to get there, and it's pretty cool to see that make a return. But on the way there, we're ambushed by the evil twins, which leads to us playing as Cortex to gun down their henchmen. Cortex plays very simply. You just shoot. He's fine. Upon arriving at the Academy of Evil, which is a fitting name for any academic center in the United States, Cortex leads us down to the boiler rooms, where you undertake one of the more interesting gameplay styles Twinsanity has to offer. I know we've done plenty of interesting shit already, but trust me.
I'm stuck! The greatest evil scientist in the world! Stuck in a pipe. How could things get any worse?
You know a game's good when they can make a fart gag funny. I mean, the only other funny fart joke I've seen is Weezer fart. I'm sorry, does this feel like a Family Guy segue to anybody else? This is one of my favorite parts of the game, joining puzzle aspects with platforming, as you have to push Cortex through tubes which will create platforms for you, and as you venture further into the boiler room, you'll have to engage switches that elevate alternating spiked platforms, as well as hit switches to reconnect more tubes before sending Cortex through them. The best part of the boiler room is saved for last though, as you fight Dingodile.
How's he, ain't it? Rumour is you two chumps have got your mitts in some treasure.
I want a piece of that pie.
I have no idea what you just said.
Dare I say, not only is this better than his Crash 3 fight, but also pre-Crash 4, perhaps the best fight in the entire franchise? Maybe that's a stretch. I am a filthy Dingodile fanboy, but regardless, this is definitely in the top 5 fights pre-Crash 4. And for a game whose bosses for the most part have been thus far, and I'm putting this lightly, fucking dog shit, this was a wonderfully pleasant surprise. It starts off with him spraying fireballs about before you have to lure him into shooting one of the vents behind you. From here, you have to belly flop the button below to engage sprinklers so you can spin him out. Each round gets a good deal more challenging than the last, as the second has him spinning around at alternating heights, the third has him spinning around at different directions and speeds before creating a huge firewall, and the final round has him firing off at alternating heights and speeds, and even alternating the direction of his massive firewall on a whim before firing off one last flurry and then taking him down. Nothing against Dingo's fight in Crash 3, it's still great, it just gets undermined a bit when you can beat it by doing this. Regardless, this fight to me is still just more tough and unpredictable anyway. I absolutely love it. From here, we make our way through the actual academy, sneaking through hallways, and also bolting it through a library being swallowed in acid. That's dandy. Wait a sec, is that fat fuck from Jak 2? Eventually, we meet up with Cortex and our control gets handed on over to him. Luckily, there is more to his gameplay here than just the shooting we saw before, and we get to see that here. Although things start off getting chased by critters, we eventually find ourselves blasting rats and using magnetic forces to platform our way over acid pools. Also, there's this great detail where when Cortex runs out of ammo, he gets really scared, but then once it's refilled, he's fucking around holding his blaster like he's gonna shoot behind his back. Cortex's section here isn't anything crazy good, but it is solid in my opinion, and I do wish we got to play as him more before the game's end. Speaking of characters, I wish I got to play more as
Nina!
Nina actually plays a good deal like Crash, but just with a grappling hook, as she has a bit more mobility than Cortex and can do the spin like Crash, of course. The grappling's pretty fun whenever it actually works. Shit gets pretty crazy at the end though, as you have to outrun your blimp that's behind you with a bus tied to it. Overall, Nina's section was awesome, and the music, like every other part of the game, is fucking top notch. But unfortunately, as things stand, this is pretty much the end for her as well. Before you're able to escape the academy, Cortex gets stopped by his old teacher, Madame Amberly, who you go on to fight. She'll shoot at these pipes you're standing on, which you have to shut before firing at bells she sends towards you, and then shooting her in the back. It's actually a pretty decent fight, way above anything else up to this point, besides Dingodile, of course. Once she's dead. You head back to the Iceberg Lab, but on the blimp ride there, Cortex recalls how he actually knows the evil twins. It turns out that when he was a kid attending the Academy of Evil, they were his pets Victor and Moritz, and he was using them to test out the Evolvo Ray, you know, that thing from Crash 1 that he used, which I thought was a really cool callback. Suffice to say, the experiment failed and sent his parents to the 10th dimension, where they've since come back swearing revenge. And with that said, it's time to finally head to the 10th dimension to take them down. Upon arriving to the new world, Cortex is,
Fur is so soft and warm. Evil Crash! No!
Gotcha, bitch!
Well, guess we gotta save Nina now. Before heading off, I just had to stop and stare at how fucking rad the 10th dimension looks. The hellish red, pink, and purple color palette, the sky has multiple suns and black holes in it, it's very chaotic looking. It's a shame that you're not able to explore the grounds below the volcanic lab, but I'm sure you can guess the reasoning as to why that is.
We've run out of time.
But the game immediately makes up for that missed opportunity when we have to chase after Nina and Evil Crash.
My daughter, niece!
I was so happy being able to do this again, and this section's probably even better than the last. It feels more fast-paced, and there's more obstacles in the way, which makes me feel that much more fucking sick when I was able to snag some gems along the way. Once you catch up to Evil Crash, he just disappears. After climbing out of the pit, you arrive at Twinsanity Island. The gem puzzles here are head and shoulders above the rest as well. We find Cortex trying to save Nina, which doesn't go well at all.
You son of a bitch!
It's funny how Crash is always the one getting chased, so of course Evil Crash does the chasing. You have to be much quicker and more precise with your timing with this escort compared to the previous one. You've got plenty of switches to hit and bridges to swing from side to side so that Cortex can walk across, and there's even times where you're supposed to leave switches alone, otherwise you would kill Cortex. Oh shit, Cortex, run! 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 Once the escort is complete, Evil Crash runs behind a rock, never to be seen again. We then meet up with Nina and Cortex outside. Wait, but you were... Whatever, we meet with them outside the twin stronghold of evil, the final level of the game, and boy howdy, it's a good one. The platforming here is easily the best of the game and some of the best from any Crash game. It's incredibly unique with platforms floating across gaps, disappearing, and features color-coordinated platforms which you have to memorize. We even get a small lava caves looking section, which was such a tease for what could have been this dimension's alternate take on the ice climb level from the Iceberg Lab. And of course, the music here is as fantastic as ever and really fitting for a final level. Before confronting the twins, we reach their treasure room we've been hearing so much about, but somehow Engine, Embryo, and Tropy are here. How the fuck?
We are rich!
That treasure is stolen property.
It's a little late to develop a conscience, Doctor.
Personally, I don't care, but I think he might want his gems back.
Oh my god, it's that dragon from that really overrated series! We then take an unnecessarily long walk to the twins' arena and finally confront them.
Victor, Moritz, back in your cage, you naughty boys.
What am I doing? Curse my regimented upbringing!
And so begins the final showdown, which is broken up into 3 phases. The first of which has you play as Nina, where you have to scale pillars around the edges of the arena to destroy generators. And sadly, Nina's controls are really screwed here. The grapple, once again, just doesn't work at what seems like random times, which is just unacceptable for the final boss of the game. Eventually, though, I was able to take the thing down, which meant it was Cortex up next, and here you have to shoot at the machine's limbs? Cortex doesn't have the best aim, so you have to be very careful. Once you take its guns out, Crash suddenly reappears with Mecha Bandicoot. Okay, this is just like, what the f- This is definitely the easiest part of the fight, and also the best because it actually works. You just slam the twins with missiles repeatedly, and that's the end of that. It's so unfortunate the controls for Cortex and especially Nina are so wonky at times because the foundation for the fight is pretty good, and it definitely feels like a grand finale. The twins flee the scene of the crime and take refuge in Evil Crash's house.
Oh boy! I love roast chicken! Well, this is one heck of an ending.
We then cut back to Cortex and Crash at the lab, where Cortex looks to erase Crash from existence, but his plan backfires spectacularly.
I never want to see your ridiculous face again! this?
Fucking hell, what a ride. Crash Twinsanity is like the ultimate roller coaster. It's an adventure that whirls you all over the place and does not slow down for even a second. It's constantly bombarding you with one gameplay style after the next, as well as characters popping up left, right, and center at times in completely nonsensical ways. It's pretty funny how this game is both the same yet complete opposite of Wrath of Cortex. Wrath of Cortex played it way too safe and ended up with mixed reception, though I like it more than most people, whereas Twinsanity admirably went balls to the wall with new ideas, but left the product feeling totally rushed, unpolished, a plot hole filled mess, and therefore once again receiving mixed reception. The nerfing of Aku Aku, I get it, but not great. If anything, just avoid putting explosives all over the place and keep the gem puzzles more creative like they were at the beginning and at the end of the game. Glitches, I honestly find amusing, and while I can look past a good portion of them because how much does this really hurt the game, this is just unacceptable. It's the final goddamned boss. The story, most of the bosses could have used some more time in the oven, but a lot of these issues arise from the tale as old as time. They didn't have enough time, so fair enough, but like it or not, this is the finished product. This is what we got, and what we got is quite perplexing in many aspects. However, for what they were able to accomplish in the time they had, while not everything is perfect or even good, I do still love a ton of it. Crash works very well in this more open world environment. I love trying to tackle the gem puzzles. Considering there's so many different gameplay styles, you'd figure they'd be spread thin and not controlled well, but nearly all of them work great. I love Cavern Catastrophe. Nina's one and only section was really fun. Boiler Room Doom was fantastic from start to finish. Ant Agony was a wonderful final level, and you already know just how much I love the Humiliskate sections.
Hell fucking yeah!
The game made me laugh time and time and time again.
You see? This is why nobody likes you.
And the music accompanying each level and cutscene is nothing short of perfection. It's so weird I'm able to acknowledge all the game's massive glaring flaws and all of this incomprehensible insanity mashed together, but I'm really struggling to find the words. I don't know what exactly it is, but I love this game despite all that. Long live this magnificent, charming bastard.